The term Pro has seemingly become a ubiquitous label slapped onto everything, from earbuds and smartphones to chipsets and laptops and many others. This oversaturation of the term has undeniably raised our expectations for these so-called Pro devices. Today, we're putting two Pro smartphones to the test with the OPPO Reno12 Pro up against the POCO F6 Pro. These models have a stark contrast in terms of specs, especially pricing, but which one truly earns the Pro moniker? What up guys, Miguel here from Yugatech, and let's find out in this comparison review. Roll that, OBB. Taking a good look at these phones, both are going for distinctive design choices. The Reno12 Pro unit we have is in the space brown colorway that kind of gives it its kind of muted look. It kind of has like a purplish tint to it also, but I can get why they called this brown, even though maybe on the camera it kind of just looks gray. The back panel, which is made of glass, curves out gently into the side frame of the phone, which we think is made of metal. I can't really be sure. Its camera island almost looks like Samsung's design, except it has a rectangular enclosure or housing that features a fluted bezel around it. For added protection, the Reno12 Pro gets a stronger IP65 rating for dust and water resistance. OPPO even touts the device as built to last, as it comes with the so-called all-around armor technology, which includes pressure resistance and anti-aging properties and splash proofing. We could only test its splash proofing, and yes, the phone screen still works even when a little bit wet. Aside from that, expect the phone to be much more protected against everyday wear and tear compared to phones that you can get at a budget of like 10K or less. On the other hand, the POCO F6 sports a matte finish glass back. The phone's design mimics a Calcutta marble-like pattern. Its back panel also curves out into the metal frame. I'm pretty sure this is metal. The camera bump covers quite a big chunk of the top center of the back. It houses 4 camera rings, but don't be fooled, the fourth one is only an LED flash. Furthermore, the black colorway even has these golden accented rings, which honestly looks to us like a desperate attempt at achieving a more premium look. The white one looks fine though. This would probably be a hot take, but we actually prefer the camera design of last year's POCO F5 Pro compared to this F6 Pro. On the bright side, we now get a matte finish back panel rather than a glossy one, so there's that. Unlike the Reno12 Pro, however, the POCO F6 Pro only gets an IP54 rating for dust and splash resistance. In terms of design, the writer of this comparison review would pretty much prefer the OPPO Reno12 Pro because it is much more visually appealing to his eyes. Not to mention, it has stronger ingress protection. The white variant of the POCO F6 Pro is at least better looking than the black one, but the phone's overall design is merely acceptable. I kind of like it though. Like personally, I kind of like it. I kind of like the base model F6 too, to be honest. In the display segment, the POCO F6 Pro brings better specs with a 6.67-inch wide Quad HD Plus AMOLED display that translates to a 3200 by 1440 resolution, giving it about 526 pixels per inch. Its peak brightness can reach an impressive 4000 nits for HDR and 1200 nits in high brightness mode. The Reno12 Pro sports a tad bit larger 6.7-inch curved Quad AMOLED display, but is left with only a Full HD Plus resolution, which is 2412 by 1080 pixels to be exact, and that gives it a pixel density of 394 pixels per inch. While it can reach a peak brightness of 1200 nits, it doesn't go as high as the F6 Pro. Both phones deliver smooth visuals with a 120Hz refresh rate and feature Corning Gorilla Glass protection, though the Reno12 Pro benefits from Victus 2 protection, while the F6 Pro gets Gorilla Glass 5. Another key difference is the Reno12 Pro uses a quad curved panel as compared to the POCO F6 Pro's flat screen, which in general we do feel does look better in our opinion. But of course, preference. What's interesting though is that the Reno12 Pro's display curvature is less pronounced, so there's less room for unwanted glare here. Despite the major differences, viewing experience should be more than acceptable on both devices having support for dual stereo speakers. However, the POCO F6 Pro stands out by offering support for both Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, bringing a more immersive audio-visual experience to the end user. Therefore, the POCO F6 Pro earns the point for this round. Performance might be the biggest letdown for one of these two smartphones. And guess what? It's the more expensive OPPO Reno12 Pro. Powering this phone is a mid-range chip, the MediaTek Dimensity 7300 Energy, built on a 4nm process node and can reach maximum clock speeds of up to 2.5 GHz only. In stark contrast, the POCO F6 Pro boasts a flagship-grade Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, another 4nm chipset by Qualcomm, but with a significantly higher clock speed at 3.19 GHz. As for configuration, the Reno12 Pro comes with a single variant that comes with 12GB of LPDDR4X memory and 512GB of expandable UFS 3.1 storage. Meanwhile, the F6 Pro comes with up to 16GB of faster LPDDR5X memory and up to 1TB of UFS 4.0 internal storage. Sadly, no microSD expansion on here. Of course, we're not basing off of chipset tiering and the spec sheet alone. Let's pull up some numbers, shall we? Our benchmark results, as you would expect, reveal a massive gap in performance. In Antutu, the POCO F6 Pro was able to pump out twice as much at over 1.5 million points as compared to the Reno12 Pro's 700,000 points. The same goes for other tests as well, particularly in Geekbench 6, showing more favorable scores for the POCO F6 Pro. While these numbers are expected from a flagship chipset, they are certainly surprising given the POCO F6 Pro's lower cost. In real-world use cases, expect the F6 Pro to be miles ahead in day-to-day tasks, especially gaming. We previously tested both of them by playing some games, including graphically intensive ones like Genshin Impact. There's no doubt that the F6 Pro handled it with ease, providing consistent frame rates at even high graphics settings. Whereas the OPPO Reno12 Pro stumbled at high graphic settings, so much so we had to tone down the graphics just to get more stable frame rates out of this guy. For lighter tasks, the Reno12 Pro will do just fine. However, when it comes to heavy lifting, the POCO F6 Pro is your best bet. Moving on to cameras. This is where the POCO F6 Pro takes a heavy blow from the Reno12 Pro. On paper, the latter boasts a better camera system that consists of a 50-megapixel main shooter, an 8-megapixel ultrawide, and another 50-megapixel telephoto lens. In contrast, the POCO F6 Pro has a triple rear camera setup consisting of a 50-megapixel main sensor, an 8-megapixel ultrawide lens, and a less impressive 2-megapixel macro sensor. Putting both spec sheets aside, you can still capture some nice images out of both phones. Clarity is sharp and color reproduction is vivid, especially on the Reno12 Pro, all the while maintaining a natural look. Selfies are also better on the Reno12 Pro, thanks to its 50-megapixel front camera with autofocus. The selfie shooter on the POCO F6 Pro isn't on par either, with only a 16-megapixel sensor and no autofocus support. As for videos, both phones support optical image stabilization. However, only the POCO F6 Pro supports video capture of up to 8K at 30 frames per second. The Reno12 Pro is capped at 4K at 30 frames per second, and there wouldn't be any form of stabilization when shooting in this format. To have a better idea of how these phones handle photography, check out some of our sample shots. Offering a more flexible camera setup, the Reno12 Pro evens out the match. Battery-wise, both phones pack the usual 5,000 mAh unit. Having the same battery capacity, we could expect that they will have more or less the same battery life. But for some reason, they do not. In our PC Mark Work 3.0 battery life test, the Reno12 Pro managed to outlast the competition, crossing 18 hours and 35 minutes. A pretty solid result, while the POCO F6 Pro only lasted 10 hours and 50 minutes. This could be due to a couple of reasons. Like we discussed earlier, the F6 Pro has a higher resolution AMOLED display. And since our tests involved the screen being turned on for the duration of the whole test, it may have been a factor for the phone's short battery life. Another potential reason we could think of is software optimization. The battery life result may as well suggest that the Reno12 Pro has a more optimized software, leading to less power consumption with the hardware. Or maybe this is just the Qualcomm MediaTek diff? To compromise, the POCO F6 Pro has a faster 120-watt charging rate, minimizing downtimes. The Reno12 Pro is left with an 80-watt charging rate, which is still fast, but just not as fast as this. So in this segment, it just makes sense to give both a point, so it's a tie. On the software side, both phones run on Android 14 out of the box. The Reno12 Pro has ColorOS 14.1 as its interface, and the F6 Pro is skinned with Xiaomi's HyperOS. Both softwares are good in their own rights, although I feel like there are some things that ColorOS does better than HyperOS. For example, Xiaomi has yet to figure out how to implement their version of the dynamic island, but maybe they just don't plan to. The Reno12 Pro, on the other hand, and other OPPO phones already have a similar feature where some app operations can be minimized to the status bar as a pill, where the front-facing camera is situated. It's not an exact copy of Apple's dynamic island, but it's surely an inspired one that Xiaomi needs to consider giving a shot. As for update policy, I'm happy to report that both the Reno12 Pro and the POCO F6 Pro get 3 years of major OS upgrades and 4 years of security patches. Connectivity-wise, both phones cover the essentials including 5G, NFC, but only the F6 Pro gets the latest Wi-Fi 7 technology. The Reno12 Pro gets Wi-Fi 6 support. For biometrics, both have an under-display fingerprint sensor alongside Face Unlock. An advantage of the Reno12 Pro is having a micro SD card slot for storage expansion, which is always a plus in our book. And not to mention, both these devices also get infrared sensors at the top, so you can use both the POCO F6 Pro and the OPPO Reno12 Pro as universal remotes for your smart appliances. So in this segment, I think the Reno12 Pro deserves credit for its most feature-packed operating system and the rare storage expansion feature. Now, we go back to the question, which one is the better pick? Both devices undeniably went head-to-head in this comparison, with each one making a comeback in different key areas. However, processing power being one of the most crucial factors in choosing a smartphone, the POCO F6 Pro deserves the big win. With a relatively lower price tag starting at only 26,999 pesos, the POCO F6 Pro delivers top-notch flagship-grade performance and a stunning viewing experience. It falls a bit short in camera performance and some software quirks, but greater performance overshadows these drawbacks. The OPPO Reno12 Pro, while it provides better camera prowess and better software experience, its price tag might be holding it back from being a compelling option, coming in at a hefty 34,999 pesos. Ultimately, the choice is yours. So, are you team OPPO in this video, or are you team POCO? OPPO and POCO. Or POCO. Either way, let us know in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this comparison review video, or you found it informative or educational, be sure to smack that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit the bell icon so you get notified of our future uploads. Be sure to visit yugatech.com and follow us on all our social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok for the latest tech news and reviews. Once again, this has been Miguel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Mwah, mwah. Bye-bye.